Welcome to TriloTalk. This is a podcast dedicated to topics that we think are important to the profession of medical writing. And our goal is to bring these topical issues and ideas to the forefront and spark conversations in the medical writing community.
Hello, I'm Chamberlain James. I'm Senior Partner at Trilogy, and I'm joined today by Nikesh Shah, VP of Gen AI Solutions at Indegene. Today, I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I get to sit down and talk all things AI agents with Nikesh, who's an expert. So welcome, Nikesh. Welcome to TriloTalk.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I mean, it's great to be part of the TriloTalk series. And yeah, hopefully I can live up to the expectation of being an expert.
I have no doubt about that at all. But for our listeners, let's start with something fairly basic. What exactly is agentic AI? We're hearing about agents and agentic AI, and we all know about Gen AI, or at least we've heard about that a lot more than agentic. So what is the difference? Is it the same thing or is it very different?
Fantastic question, Lisa. So the agentic AI is really the next stage of evolution from a generative AI or a Gen AI perspective, right? Typically in the AI circles, the first wave of Gen AI, is often called assistive AI. Right. So it assists us to do certain tasks, and obviously a much more cognitively rich tasks better than the traditional AI used to do. Now, where agentic AI differs, or where it is evolved further, is that agentic AI essentially can take some decisions on its own, right, based on obviously the guardrails that we put around it. But what it does is that it can be very goal oriented. So it knows that, okay, it has to accomplish something. B, it is able to decide on a path that needs to be taken to achieve that goal. And C, depending on, as I said, the level of autonomy that we give it, it can go ahead and decide on its own and be self-aware. So what I mean by self-aware is that in pursuit of that path or that goal, if it finds that something is not right, it will course correct and readjust its logic to get to that path. So that's the difference between agentic AI and the first wave, which is the assistive AI.
Wow, that sounds very, very clever and also slightly terrifying. Yes. Certainly the future. So would you say, is it fair to say that agentic or agents would work with generative tools to achieve their task? Is that a good way of thinking about it?
Oh yeah. The bedrock or the basic technology is still generative AI. All right, it is still LLMs that are going to be used, to do each of the tasks that agents, are expected to do. It's as I said, it's just a more sophisticated version of Gen AI.
Wow. Fantastic. And you mentioned guardrails. I'm going to come back to that in a little while, because I know certainly in our industry, it's all about the checks and balances and guardrails. But talking about our industry, working with the pharmaceutical industry and in healthcare, how do you envisage? I mean, I can imagine there's a whole load of use cases for agents. I mean, I'm imagining kind of everything from putting the kettle on to bringing Brad Pitt to my door, although that's probably a bit of a stretch. So how would you imagine that we should use or can use AI agents?
Yeah. So as we've said, right, that Gen AI assists us with some basic capabilities, and we've seen it's powerful enough. Now, where agents will help us and work closely with us experts is that it will take away the task of too many interventions. So, for example, I mean, let's talk about some examples and bring it to life. Right now, when you are writing a regulatory report, you have to do multiple things as a writer. You have to determine what the right sources of information are. You have to go in and collect that information. You have to sift through it. You have to get the right extract the right information out of it, do your analysis, and then obviously write that particular particular report. Now, what agents can do is that they can, based on the type of report you're writing, right? Whether you're writing a CSR or you're writing an aggregate report or a CMC document for that matter, it would be intelligent enough to know where to get the information from. It would extract the right information that is needed and create a first draft, right? And then, of course, experts such as yourselves come in and say, okay, is this fine? Is there any tweak needed? Or you can refine the output based on your need. So that's an example of where an agent could really come in handy. Another example is, on, let's say, medical legal review, where there are very, very different kinds of reviews that need to be done, right? You have to do editorial checks, grammar checks, you have to do industry guideline checks, fact validation, etc. Now, doing multiple of these things, right, and different agents can do it, and then finally the reviewer can, a medical reviewer or a technical reviewer can look at it and say, okay, it makes sense or not.
That sounds fantastic. So it sounds to me like right now with Gen AI tools, a lot of the Gen AI tools, medical writers have to learn to write proper prompts, and it's that old adage, rubbish in, rubbish out, and it's causing a lot of anxiety in the medical writing community because we're medical writers, we're not prompt engineers, and prompt engineering is a whole other skill set. It really is. You can do courses, and I've done a couple of courses on it. It's a big thing. This is not something that is intuitive or comes naturally, even to professional communicators. So it sounds to me like we could just interact with an agent instead. And is the idea that we are able to use natural language with agents, or do we have to learn to prompt engineer with agents as well?
No. So great point again. The idea is to use natural language with agents. Oftentimes, you don't even have to tell the agent to go ahead and do what you want it to do. Only when you wanted to refine something, you could interact with it and say, hey, instead of a paragraph, give it this to me in a bullet point list, or some such kind of an instruction to refine your output. But otherwise, the agent will understand the trigger that it is supposed to do this particular task. Again, it all depends on how we set it up, but broadly it can even do that. And overnight, let's say a certain task needs to be done, it can be done overnight, and by the time a medical writer logs in, they have an output ready that they can look at, right? So in many ways, it's extending the time available to do by 16, 18 hours.
Wow, that's incredible. And so is the idea that because obviously we're a service company, Indegene and Trilogy is a service company, and we have lots and lots of different clients, thankfully. Is the idea that you'd have one agent servicing all of those clients, or is each agent for the client? I mean, you mentioned guardrails earlier on. I can imagine the first question that a lot of our clients will ask is, okay, well, does my agent also interact with my competitor's agent? And is that a problem? How do you make sure that, it's ring fenced? How do you deal with that from a technological point of view?
Okay, so let's take it at a slightly higher level first, and then we'll go exactly to the question you asked, right? First and foremost, right, it is about the, privacy, confidentiality, etc. of the data. Not just necessarily whether learnings from one client are being applied to another client or not, that will come to. But even when you're doing it for any single client, is the data going out to train the LLM? Is it going out into the internet, etc.? The implementation that we do, right, we make sure that the entire agentic setup is in a secure environment, which is dedicated to every single client. And not just that, it is not going out into the internet, right, to search for information. Most cases, right, Lisa, you know this better than I do, most of the information that is needed is available within the company's repositories, whether it's a certain database or a certain RIMS platform or your clinical platforms, etc. And the integrations can be built, and information is got from there. It doesn't need to go out into the internet and get any information. Neither does it pass any information back to any of the LLMs or to any of our own models to train and refine them. Because that's another concern that our clients have. Is my information going to train your models to make them better?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right, that none of that happens. These are all pre-trained models. So no training is happening of the models. What happens is that if a certain output is not as per the expectation of a client, feedback is given, and the feedback loop trains the agent to say that, okay, you know what, instead of doing it like this, do it like this. Right. So that's, I wanted to, elevate that to say that from a data confidentiality perspective, right, it is as, it's pretty secure. Now to your next question around, is, the same agent being used, for another client, etc. The answer is no. Obviously, what Indegene does is that it has created certain intelligence in the agent, which is more generic, or more sort of saying, okay, as a medical writer, you are supposed to know how to write a certain document.
Yeah.
Right. So the agent will know that, but how client A writes it, the nuances, the SOPs, the work instructions, right? Any lean writing
Style guides and
principles,
stuff.
style guides, right? The training of that to that particular agent is for that client's agent specifically. Right. If another client comes to us and says, hey, can you do the same thing? Another instance of the base agent is commissioned for that client in, again, a secure environment. There is no way that this particular agent will talk to the agent of client A, even if they're doing the same task. Because again, the client B will have its own set of instructions, style guides, lean writing principles, blah blah blah. Does that hopefully answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's really, really reassuring, and it's kind of a similar answer to what we give when clients say to us, but you've got a medical writer sitting on that desk working on a competitor document. How do I know there's not going to be any cross contamination, if you like, for want of a better word, with my medical writer who might be sat on a desk next to them? And so I think it's a similar approach. And I think if it's acceptable and we've managed that in our industry with people, it should be actually probably even easier, I would say, to do that technically, because we can't shove people into a cupboard, or we shouldn't, we're not allowed to, and not let them interact with anybody else. So it's actually, I think it's probably easier to do it technically the way you described than it actually is with my bank of human writers, to be honest.
No, absolutely, you're right.
But you're speaking very much as if this is happening right now, Nikesh. And I saw a report very recently from the FDA who announced their agents. Is this happening right now? I mean, is it out there? Are we using agents? How far away is this?
Again, so different across different functions, agents are already finding a lot of use, and it's a here and now moment, but it's also a time where over the next 2 years, we will see this become mainstream, 2 to 3 years. Wow. Yeah, it's starting to catch on. I mean, outside of life sciences and outside of the core domain areas, a lot of the supporting areas like finance or HR or legal, etc. Those are already using agents, and they are already part of the production processes that many companies have. And outside of pharmaceutical industry, life science industry, retail, e-commerce, financial services, etc., they have already started implementing that. So it is something that is here and now, even within life sciences. I think experimentation has started across almost all areas. And as we are a cautious lot, and rightly so. We're dealing with human lives. So we are a cautious lot, and everything needs to be checked, validated, tested. The human SMEs need to have the trust that the agents are doing what they're supposed to do. But in many of our platforms, we have already started embedding agents And based on the validations we've done, they're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, I can speak from my own experience, because I know you let me loose on the system and let me have a play with an agent. I certainly find it so much easier interacting with an agent than trying to kind of prompt engineer and dealing directly with the Gen AI tool. I kind of in my head, because I have a very simplistic view of technology, I kind of envisage it as almost like a translator for me, for what I'm trying to get out of the tool, but don't know how to go and get it without having a great big long prompt that I then promptly lose and then have to rewrite again, and it takes days, and then that's a bit of a drama.
Yeah, and you bring in a good perspective, right? Which I wanted to kind of get into also is, I think we have to start thinking of agents almost as a buddy, right, or as an assistant that is, helping us in our day-to-day jobs, and doing a lot of things that either we don't like doing, or we are better off doing something which requires a lot more of our gray cells than just the grunt work that we're doing. And even the way we train the agents is very similar to how we would train a human being who we've just hired, or somebody who's just come fresh out of college, right? So we have to start thinking of them as almost part of our workforce, an extended workforce. Just that you can't see or feel that person, but they're doing the a large part of the tasks that we as humans do.
Yeah, I love that analogy. And I remember you giving me that advice when we started talking about agents. And that's certainly how I approach my ELSA. Sorry for the listeners. ELSA is what we call our agents at Indegene, expert life science agents. So yeah, I'm kind of talk to my ELSA quite a lot. I really, that is definitely, I can see how people almost anthropomorphize agents, because you do start to feel like you're talking to a human being. Yeah. They respond in the way humans do. You can talk in the way humans do. It's quite disconcerting when you have to keep reminding yourself that actually this is a computer behind all of this. It's not right. It's not a mini Nikesh or a mini Lisa. This is actually a computer algorithm. It's very, very disconcerting. So how do you think the AI agents could change our role? The role of regulatory professionals, the role of medical writers moving forwards? What do you see as the future on that side of things?
Yeah, and I know there are some concerns as well that professionals have. Is it going to replace our jobs, or will there be a need for us anymore? I know as we learn a lot more about agents, as we start using them a lot more, I think we believe that it's going to be something that is going to really enrich our lives and not necessarily substitute or replace us, and allow us to be a far better version of ourselves than what we are today. Simply because we will be able to focus a lot more on taking strategic decisions, taking medically right decisions, etc., and adding value in a way that computers or agents today can't. Right. So the way the role is going to change, right, is today, for example, if you are an experienced medical writer, your role might be to review something that a junior medical writer might have done, provide guidance, correct it, add that additional layer of advice or expertise on top of what a junior medical writer might have done. It's going to be similar, right, where you're now doing the same thing from an output of what an agent has done. Right. Instead of a human that has done it, now an agent has presented the same work to you, and you have to provide that feedback, that guidance, etc. So the delta is the way you would provide the feedback to a human might be different, obviously, than how you would do it to an agent. So that's a little bit of the change management that we'll have to do in terms of how do we now give that feedback right to the agent instead of another human being, and how do we make sure that the same sort of job is not repeated? How do we train the agent? So as another change that is likely to happen is, instead of training a human, you're going to provide certain advice and training to an agent, So how do you do that? So some of those changes will come in, but a human with an agent is going to be so much more effective than a human without an agent. So I would really urge all the Trilo Talk listeners that embrace this, because it's you are going to be much better off with it than without it.
It certainly sounds like anything that can help me be a better version of myself. I'm definitely all in for that. And it sounds like it's definitely worth the time and effort to train an agent, just as it is worth the time and effort to train a human starter level medical writer, because the output you get is going to be so much better in the end that you can work with and move forwards with. So that makes complete sense. And it's all a lot easier, I think, to wrap your head around if you think about it as an apprentice level medical writer that you're training up. I think I love your analogy for that. I think it works really, really well. So Nikesh, I can see we're almost at time, but I want to finish with asking you a question that I get asked on a regular basis. So I'm passing the pain along, because this is not an easy question to answer. My clients, and often medical writers themselves, really ask me, this world of technology, generative technology particularly, is moving so fast. It's going so quickly. I mean, agentic AI wasn't even heard of last year, and all of a sudden now we're talking about agents, not just, as a concept, but real agents that we're working with on a day-to-day basis. How on earth do we stay ahead of this AI curve? How do our clients make sure they're using state-of-the-art equipment, state-of-the-art processes? How do medical writers know how to prepare themselves for technology that will be brand new next year, that we're not even conceiving of right now? How do you stay ahead of this curve?
Yeah, well, yes, it is a tough question, Lisa.
That's why I'm passing it to the expert, Nikesh. Whatever you say, I'm going to be telling everybody else from now on.
Sure. No, let me again, I don't necessarily claim to have an answer to this, but let me give you my perspective. And there are two parts to this. One, in terms of staying ahead of this tech, or staying abreast with this technology, as somebody who's using the technology to develop new tools and new platforms, etc. And the other part is as a user, like a medical writer who's more a user of this rather than using it as a tool to create something new. Right. So I'll try and answer both parts of it. Now, being in the life sciences industry, in many ways, this actually helps us, because what you want to do is you want to make sure that you create something using a certain technology that is consistent, that is repeatable, and that is reliable, right? Now, once you get that, you don't necessarily have to kind of keep changing that on a month to month basis just because a better toy or a more powerful model has come in, right? Because on our side we do a lot of validation, and the validation is documented, etc. All right, and what we do is we set up periodic reviews. So once every 6 months or once every year, we look at what the state of the art has been and how significantly does it change what we have already developed, which is already working in production. Right. And I'll just take an analogy. Like, for example, NASA does not use the state of the art computers. It uses computers a couple of generations older, simply because those have been well tested and they work. Right. And they're mission critical applications. Now, in our case as well, while our applications may not be mission critical, but we are dealing with human lives, and we want to make sure that we're getting a consistent output. And the limitations of their output are well known, so the humans can really plug it and do that. So from a person who's using AI to develop these things, there is a certain regular checkpoint that we have to improve and then replace, and then again do our testing, make sure we're rolling out something new. So that's the one part of it. The second part, which is really as a medical writer, right, which is probably this is the question that your users or your readers will be more interested in. As a medical writer, the beauty is that technology is actually slowly getting out of your way. What we discussed at the start of the call, you don't have to learn prompts, right?
Yeah.
You talk to agents in a way that you would talk to other human beings.
Yeah.
And in that way, one layer of technology has been taken away, right? It's what, let's say, an iPad or an iPhone did to our, the way we communicate, right? It really made it so intuitive that a child can start using without any formal training. So while that is a complex piece of technology, it's actually taking the technology challenge out of the way and making it very intuitive. So as a medical writer, we will see a world where slowly it is, you would think of agents or this technology as almost an apprentice that we discussed, as a buddy, and you don't necessarily have to worry about technology and learning that and keeping pace with it. Of course, if you're an enthusiast, you by all means do it, because it's a really exciting world. I mean, I'm really fascinated and amazed every single day, every single week on it. But it's really going to really get out of your way and let you do what you do best.
Excellent. And Nikesh, as always, I always learn something every time I speak to you, and you always manage to reassure me at the same time. I don't quite know how you manage that, but I'm very grateful that you do. Thank you so much for your time today. I've really, really enjoyed talking with you, and I hope our listeners have enjoyed it too. Thanks, Nikesh.
Thank you so much for having me on TriloTalks. I see most of your, the series that you have, and I find it. I mean, I learn a lot every single time as well. So thank you so much for having me, Lisa.
My absolute pleasure, Nikesh. Thank you. Speak to you soon.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to TriloTalk today. If you have feedback you'd like to share, or if you have any ideas for future topics you'd like us to cover, particularly something you think the community should be talking about, we would love to hear it. We would like this to be an ongoing conversation with medical writers at large, and you can send us your comments on our Twitter feed or our LinkedIn page. Just a reminder, you can find all our episodes of TriloTalk podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, Spotify, and trilogywriting.com/TriloTalk. Have a great rest of your day.